Hello and welcome back. I am Mr. Sosatris, and this week I'm talking about romance novels. So romance isn't a genre that I read often, but I do go to that well on occasion when I need like a palate cleanser. Historical romance, fantasy romance, contemporary, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like any book fan, even if they're not really a romance fan, which is totally fine, needs to be aware of what a massive juggernaut romance is in the publishing industry. It's insane. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking about some misconceptions about romance as a genre. This isn't going to be me like pressuring everyone to read it. If it's not your thing, that's totally fine. But I also wanted to include some facts to show just how important romance is to like the bookish world in general, because really it keeps it going. So first off, let's talk numbers. Romance is by and large one of the most profitable genres. I think it is the most profitable fiction genre, and it's not even close. So there was a study done in 2022, and romance revenue was over like $1.44 billion that year, and it is going up every year. And if you compare that to fantasy and science fiction, if you combine them together, the total amount that they brought in was only about 560 million, which means that romance beat science fiction and fantasy by like 400 some million dollars. It's nuts. It, like most publishing houses that do offer romance as well as other things, usually the romance wing of things is what keeps the lights on and keeps, that's where most of their revenue comes from. So romance is definitely a huge money maker, and even if you're not a fan of it, you definitely should appreciate it for being as massive and profitable as it is. So let's talk about what romance is not, because I think there is a lot of misconceptions about romance as a genre by kind of other people who read other genres. Now, for me, my main genres that I read are science fiction, fantasy, and like classics. I do read romance every now and then here and there, but my main focus is always going to be science fiction, fantasy, and classics. But I think it's definitely good to like be aware of what romance is and what it isn't. So the first one is romance is not trashy. You hear this a lot, and people will often make fun of the romance genre as being kind of trashy and silly. But okay, so think of it this way. If you're a science fiction and fantasy fan, you've probably heard the big fancy literary fiction snobs who look down on science fiction and fantasy and say that it's not a real, artistic genre. There's no merit to it. It's not really worth, whatever, because, literary fiction is elevated and better and fancier. And so that's the one that should get all the, attention. I got this a lot when I was in grad school. And so just like how science fiction and fantasy fans don't like being looked down on by literary fiction fans, romance fans really don't deserve to be looked down on for, what they love reading. Don't look at romance stuff and say, oh, well, that's just trashy and that's not real, books like sci-fi and fantasy is. So, everyone can just read what they love, and that's fine, and there's no one genre that's better or worse than any other genre. Another thing is that romance is specifically for women. Now, this is sort of true and it's not, in that a lot of romance is marketed towards women. There's a lot in romance that of course definitely appeals to them, depictions of kind, male main characters, kind love interests who are respectful and emotionally intelligent and who treat the women in their lives well. So I mean, obviously that's a fantasy that's going to appeal to a lot of women, but romance does not have to be specifically for women. And in fact, I know I've talked to a number of romance readers who are women who have said that they really wish that more men would read romance, not to like be obsessed with it and read everything and that's the only thing they can read, but just reading a romance novel every now and then is good because it really offers good, healthy depictions of like healthy relationships and how to treat women and what women want and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to be aware of that stuff if you are a straight male and you are baffled by all the women in your life. So just either listen to the women in your life or read the occasional romance novel, because it will help you understand, I promise. Now, addressing the elephant in the room, there is also gay romance, and that's fine. There's a lot of really great new authors that are coming out that are writing wonderful love stories, fantasy, reality, sci-fi, all of it. It's fine. Now, one thing I do kind of want to address a little bit is there is a lot of romance out there that's written by women, and a lot of it is aimed at women, so it's not something that really appeals to me, and it may not appeal to actual gay readers because it's sort of not depicting the experience realistically. So, you know, be aware of that. But there are a lot of really great, amazing male writers of romance that are doing amazing things and telling really good stories that are just fun, and you should definitely check those out if that's your thing. Next up is kind of another thing that I hear a lot, and that's, what about dark romance, where you have romance that is a little more messy or toxic or dangerous or scary, all that kind of stuff. And I just want to say, when you see someone reading a Stephen King novel, like It, say, you know, do you assume that that person really enjoys seeing people being killed horribly by like a cosmic being? Or do they just enjoy the genre because it's thrilling and it's cathartic and it's a mystery and it's scary and, you know, all that kind of stuff? You know, it's okay to read something that's scary and just enjoy it, you know. There's lots of different things. I love scary movies. I like horror books. It's a genre that's fun, and it doesn't mean that I'm like an awful person for liking that genre. But I feel like when people see dark romance or hear about it, they always assume that the women reading it are unable to kind of separate that from reality, and they think that that's sort of the real reality and that's what they really want. It's like, obviously not. If you talk to any woman who reads dark romance, she's absolutely going to tell you that if any man did anything that the male main characters did in those books in real life, she would call the police because it's, you know, not reality. It's fiction. It's thrilling. It's scary. It's fantasy. It's fine, honestly. There's nothing weird about women who read dark romance. It's a valid genre, and, you know, there's lots of other messed up genres that people read that they don't question, like murder mysteries. I've never heard anyone say, it's like, you read lots of Agatha Christie, you must enjoy seeing people dying. What does that say about you? Like, come on, no one says that. Everyone reads murder mysteries because they want to get to the end and solve the mystery. And it's, you know, exciting and all that kind of stuff. So dark romance, stalker romance, all that kind of stuff that when you look at it, you go, ugh, it's fiction, and it's a healthy way to engage in dark fiction, and it's fine. I don't know, I feel like more people should be asking fantasy readers who enjoy like grimdark, like, why do you enjoy grimdark? Is it just because you like seeing people tortured and hurt all the time? It's like, no, of course not. It's fantasy and it's fine. So the moral of the story here is just let people enjoy what they enjoy and know they're not monsters because they like reading a certain genre. It's fine. Another criticism that I see a lot of romance is they say that romance is like tropey or repetitive. And like, maybe, but that's not a bad thing, because there's lots of tropes that we love seeing over and over and over again, and it's fine. You know, if you think about in fantasy, all of the stories that involve kind of a normal everyday person becoming like the chosen one, you know, or something to face down a great evil. It's fine. It's a fun story, and we love that kind of story, especially if they start knowing nothing, and then by the end of the series, they're like this mega badass who knows all this magic or something, and they can take down, you know, the bad guy. It's a trope, and it's okay. One of my favorite tropes ever is science fiction that involves like ancient alien ruins and old technology that still works. Like, no matter how many times I encounter that, I will always love it. You see that in things like Stargate and Mass Effect and The Expanse, and it just never gets old. Anytime I'm reading a science fiction book and there's ancient alien ruins and something in it is still working, I am there and I am excited to read it. Even though I've read similar stuff before and watched it and played it, like, even though I've encountered it many, many, many times before, it's fine. I still enjoy reading those kinds of stories. So, tropes are fine, and even if it's repetitive, it's okay. So the moral of the story here is that romance is awesome. You don't have to read it if you don't want to, but be aware that it is something that is very important to the publishing industry, and it's one of those things that kind of funds projects that publishers wouldn't normally want to take a chance on. If they're making a ton of money from the romance wing of things, then they're more likely to take a chance on like a great fantasy author or a great historical fiction author to try something new. So, respect romance even if you don't read it. And if you do want to read it, I am going to give just one recommendation. There is a ton of stuff. It's a massive, massive universe in the bookish world. But if you're like a guy and you don't really read romance ever, but you're curious to maybe read one just to see what the fuss is about, or maybe to make your girlfriend happy or whatever, one that I would recommend is Nora Roberts' Chesapeake Bay Saga. The first book is called Sea Swept, and each book is told from the point of view of a different brother. It's told from the point of view of the guy, and it's these four brothers. They each have like amazing jobs. One of them's like a racer, one of them's like a high-powered lawyer, and their father dies. They all come together. Oh, and there's a cat here. They all come together and they want to carry out their father's last wish, and they start a business together. And then while this is all going on, there's this like teenage boy who kind of ends up coming into their lives. Turns out he's like a foster son of their father, so he's sort of like their young foster brother. And so these four guys who all have like their own lives out in the world, they all have to sort of take care of this kid and raise this kid together because they have no clue what they're doing. And all the while they're starting a new business and they're, trying to kind of make something happen. And each book follows a different one of those characters who meets a woman in their world somehow, and he falls in love with her, and, the story goes on. Each story builds on the one before, and it's honestly just a really great story. It's not sappy, it's not cheesy, it's not goofy, and it's just engaging, and it's a great story, and it's all about like family, in the Fast and the Furious sense of things. So I would really, really recommend that one if you're kind of a guy who has no clue what to read. If you're a longtime reader of romance, I would love to hear your recommendations for your favorite books in the comments. If you've never read any of them before, tell me your favorite movie, and I'll see if I can find a recommendation that suits you, because there's honestly a lot of stuff out there. So with that said, I'll let you go. Read what you want, have a great time, don't judge other people for reading what they love, and just enjoy reading. And with that said, I will see you next week. All right, bye.